In this video, we're going to showcase the worst to the best evolution from the perfect match. As you guys might know, on February 14, on Valentine's Day, we're gonna get one free evolution from the Clash Royale team. And for example, I wanna pick the Knight. I'm just gonna click match, and by the day of Valentine's, we should be getting our evolution for free. To make a tier list where I'm gonna explain why which cards are worst and why which cards are best, so you guys take your best decision out of what you need. If this content is valuable to you or it helped you, please consider to subscribe and check out all my content in this channel. Starting off this video, the worst evolution card will be the Evo RG. And why? It is because Evo RG isn't the best card in the meta right now, like do all the E-Giants, Giant Graveyards, all these minor control decks with Cannoneer especially, wreck RG. So I will say RG so far is the worst evolution at the moment, and it's not only because of the meta, it's only because you have to build a deck around RG, so it gives you limited options to make a deck, plus it's not the best card in the meta. With the number 7, we're gonna pick actually the Evo Mortar, and it's not because the Evo Mortar is bad. The main thing about the Evo Mortar is that the versatility it has is just very limited. It's kind of similar to RG. At least with Evo Mortar, you can play like 3 different archetypes. You can play Mortar Bait, right? You can play Miner Poison Cycle, right? Which is decent. You can play Hog Rider Cycle, which is okay, and maybe some kind of E-Giant deck. The thing about this is like you need to be either very skilled with cycle decks, or otherwise will be pretty hard to break through against, you know, like good players or against players that have like pretty good answers if your deck is just built around spam or swarm units. So that's the main thing about Mortar. We have less versatility to do OP combos. This card will be the Evo Bats. And it's not that they suck, they're actually pretty good overall in beatdown and some minor cycle decks. So I would say if you especially play beatdown or heavier decks, I recommend you to use the Evo Barbs. Also, if you use Breach Spam, it's a pretty good idea because they are actually pretty strong, but it's just the fact that there are better cards that fits in way more decks than the E-Barbs. That's the main thing about the Evo Barbs not being higher in this list. We're getting spicy, and the 5th card will be the Bats. I think the Bats are pretty good because you can pair them in like almost any single deck. You can put them in Miner Cycle, you can put them in a Balloon deck, you can put them in Lava Hound, you can put them, I don't know, like in Mega Knight, for example. It could even work in a deck, for example, like P.E.K.K.A. Balloon. You have plenty of options with Bats, and the fact that it's just a cycle card and 2 cycles, it's pretty good. We have pretty good options with the Evo Bats, and especially now with the double evolution slot that is coming to Clash Royale. For example, I think will fit perfect like in Giant Graveyard, in Balloon Cycle, either with Recruits or either with Evo Knight. I think Evo Bats are pretty good, and a pretty good option if you're a cycle player, but at the same time you want to play heavier decks. Then Evo Bats is the solution, because then you can play them in almost any deck. One of the most annoying and controversial cards in Clash Royale, and it's the Firecracker. It's a card that is pretty fun. For some, it's pretty OP, but for some others, it's pretty bad or pretty weak. The thing about the Firecracker is that now with the double evolution that is coming, we can use it in Royal Hogs, we can use it also in Recruits Spam, for example, of course in Hog Cycle, in the mythical and the only one Hog Cycle deck. So there is plenty of options, and the thing is like in almost any single deck that Firecracker is in, it's always dominating in the meta. So for example, Hog or Recruits, both are pretty good decks that they're not only strong, they've been dominating these past months. I will say the Firecracker is always a safe pick to go if you want to choose an evolution. Now we're gonna go with the top 3 evolutions, and just a side note for this, I think all of them are like at the same level or position. I wouldn't say that one is above than the other. Those 3 are just pretty good because of the meta, and of course because of the versatility. So we're gonna start with the Evo Skellies. The Evo Skellies that you know that you can put them in Hog, in Royal Hogs, in Giant Skelly decks, in you can even put them in RG, or like in regular RG, you pick the Evo Skellies, and it's always a great idea. And the fact that sometimes just Evo Skellies win games, like 3 crowning guys by their side, is just a game-changing card that you always want to have in your slots if you are like a competitive player, or if you want to improve, or even if you want to rank higher. Evo Skellies are always good. Also, the fact that there is some books, for example, with the Rage and with the Sap, that sometimes the game miss one Skelly, and that one Skelly can take your whole tower. It's a problematic that you can always take advantage. We're gonna go with the Evo Knight, and Evo Knight, it's been pretty dominant in almost any single deck, because we see him in E-Giant, we see them in beatdown decks, right? Like E-Giant, like Goblin Giant, but we also see them in decks like Hawk Rider, then Lockbait, but then we see them again in decks like Graveyard, for example, in decks like Sparky, even in P.E.K.K.A decks and in Mega Knight decks. Knight is just super strong and super versatile. For 3 elixirs, he offers too much. Now, last but not least, the Royal Recruits, and this is one of the most no-skill cards in Clash Royale, and that's why it's so good. But the fact that you can only cycle the evolution in one cycle just by doing recruits in the back first play is just so annoying and super strong, because most of the times the opponents don't know how to deal with Evo recruits in single elixir. And I mean, I suffer against them. They're pretty annoying, and sometimes I don't have elixir or the right cards to defend them. So always recruits will be a nice play. We can also fit them in Hawk, not only like in Goblin Giant or in Ram Rider decks or in spam decks. We can also play them in decks like Mortar, in decks like Balloon. There is always plenty of options for the recruits, which is insane that even that they just got nerfed, they're still one of the best evolutions in Clash Royale. I'm gonna show you the best 3 decks for these top 3 evolutions. Let's go. We're gonna start with Evo Skellies, and Mugi, the 2024 World Champion of Clash Royale, was using this deck yesterday, and he managed to get a top 20 finish with this deck, one of the most cycle and skill decks so far that I've seen in the top. We're gonna see this Royal Hawks deck. I mean, I saw Ian that was playing it. Of course, it's one of the most consistent decks. We can also play them with EQ, with Poison, or with Fireball. It's pretty versatile, and of course, we can always use Evo Skellies in almost any single cycle deck. So now I'm gonna show you also this Lockbait deck, which is pretty fun. I saw in the top, this deck finished like around top 100 in the world. So as you can see here, this deck is pretty good too. And for last, I'm gonna show you this Giant Skelly Royal Hawks deck with Fireball bait cards. This deck is pretty powerful, especially to counter like most of the Graveyard decks, and we can counter also decks like Hawk Firecracker just by arrowing and then just overwhelming our opponent with our split push. Let's go with the Evo Knight, and of course we're gonna show the deck that make Mohammed like top 2, top 3, top 4, and top 5 in the world. This guy is insane, and he was using this Miner Poison cycle deck, of course for the high skill dudes. And if not, then we're gonna have this E-Giant deck, which was doing great against all the Graveyards and also against all the cycle decks. We can also throw in here a Royal Delivery to have an amazing defense. And then we're gonna have this Sparky mini P.E.K.K.A Rage deck. Mother Witch was pretty dominant, but the fact that just Knight allows you to do a split lane pushes with just like mini P.E.K.K.A minions and just having a Sparky with the Goblin Giant in the other lane, that makes the deck pretty good. Also, this deck was made to counter like all the Graveyard decks, all the Sparky decks and whatever. This deck also works pretty good, especially against mid-ladder dudes. This deck is great. And last but not least, we're gonna use this Giant Lightning Arrows deck, which was pretty great. I think I saw people like Boss using it. You can also put in a little Prince like in any of these decks that has a Mother Witch, and it will do great. I'm gonna use this Royal Recruits bait deck, we can also use the double lane pressure, and now for the double evolution, it will be quite interesting to see if we can use the Evo Firecracker or the Evo Wall Breaker. So this deck is definitely in the spotlight. So now we're gonna have this balloon cycle deck, where it's not like a balloon cycle deck, it's more like a balloon double pressure, pretty pressure hard deck, which is pretty great, and it's been dominating not only in competitive, I think also like in pushing to top ladder, it's pretty good, so I'll recommend you guys to use it. Now we have one of the most no skill decks, and I mean, not gonna lie, almost all of the recruits deck are no skill, but this is one of the best. As you can see here, Goblin Giant, Recruits, Rage with Little Prince is just amazing. Then we're gonna have this Royal Hawks with Goblin Cage, which will be great against the Evo Wall Breakers, and we have all these bait cards and the Mother Witch to counter decks like Graveyard maybe, and decks like Mortar or Miner or whatever. This deck does amazing. And now we're gonna end with this E-Giant deck with Recruits, which is pretty crazy, but I think it's actually pretty good against weird decks. So of course we're gonna have always value, and we have 3 of the best cards in the meta: Recruits, Bowler, and Mother Witch. That was it for today's video. This video was valuable to you. Please make sure to subscribe and check out my channel for all the new content, and of course for all the tips that I'm gonna be bringing to you in Clash Royale. Have a nice day and happy Valentines. Bye bye.